All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Karl Kreder. I'm from the War Game Bootcamp. We're some people who go around to different conventions and do training sessions for war games, demos for war games. So Mo had asked me to do this. So we are going to start with Hearts and Minds. If everyone's pumped for this one, this is a very cool game. We're going to go over the basics first. I'm going to show you the map and the pieces. Then we'll talk about the cards, and then we'll talk about the sequence of play and how everything kind of fits together. We're going to start at the top of the map. The top of the map is North Vietnam. Sorry, you cannot invade North Vietnam in this game, but the North Vietnamese can stack as many units as they wish there, and that's where all their reinforcements come on. This will become important as we move along and talk about different things, but I want to make sure it's understood. That's North Vietnam, and that's where everybody starts. Now, when you load the module, if you hadn't done what I did, there'd be 3 stacks of North Vietnamese up there. But during the setup, it says the North Vietnamese are allowed to set up anywhere in North Vietnam or along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which I will explain in a moment. So I have taken the liberty to take care of the kind of optional setup stuff because I want to just get into it. I don't want to worry about all this extra stuff. So this is actually a save file that takes the setup just a little bit farther, and I'll go over that at the end if people want to see it. There are regular provinces. This is an area movement game. Some of the provinces have what's called a blue outline. If you look at Quang Nam, it has a blue outline there with crossed rifle symbols in the bottom left of it. This is a fire base for the Free World Allies, or the United States, if you want to call them that, or the blue player, as it said mostly in the rulebook. If you scroll down just a little bit farther, and you'll see a border between Quang Nai and Con Trum. I will admit my Vietnamese is not very good, so please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing things. There are 4 sections of the board. There's I-Corps, 2-Corps, 3-Corps, and 4-Corps. The red border is the border between the corps, which are sections of the map, and you will see why those are important when I show you the cards and some other things. Okay, there's also in Con Trum a brown outline on that province, and also below it in Piku and Darlac. These are mountain regions, which are important for combat, I believe. And again, Piku is also a fire base for the Free World Allies. You'll notice there's a black dotted line moving down the left-hand border of South Vietnam. That is the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Up north is Laos, which is to the left of Vietnam, and Cambodia, which is below Laos and to the left of Vietnam. North Vietnamese are allowed to move along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They are not allowed to enter Cambodia or Laos beyond the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And you'll notice there are some NVA red units set up along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. One's in Attapeu in Laos, and one's in Pei Vinh in Cambodia, down near, kind of near Saigon. Saigon's down here in the 3rd Corps area. There's also, by the way, there's another symbol on here for Saigon that is a permanent fire base, just so you're aware. Other fire bases can be taken out and things, but Saigon's is permanent. You'll notice that there are tables along both sides of the map. There's also some charts. We added the charts simply because the charts are exactly the same as what's on the map. So there is a button for charts up there next to the little straw hat. If you can't read these charts along the side of the map, they are up there. There is a year track. You'll notice it goes from 1965 to 1975. And there's a whole bunch of pieces stacked on next to it. That's just the reinforcements, so you don't have to worry about them. They're already pre-stacked for you. There are no reinforcements in 1965. 65 is already set up, so you don't need them. And to the left of that are 3 boxes: VC pool, dead pool, and body count. And below that is a game track. Okay, so the year track is kind of obvious. There are some markings underneath the years that I'm going to explain. Those are victory conditions. The VC pool All VC units are randomly drawn, so this is a random draw pool. This is also where they eventually go back when they get killed, and I'll explain how VC work here in a minute. The dead pool is where units go that move from the body count to the dead pool. At the end of each year, body count is a very important metric that you have to go through and measure. It can do things like score points for either side, well, mainly for the red or North Vietnamese side. And it can also be the Arvin, how many dead Arvin can sway the South Vietnamese government into a coup. So having them in the body count box is important, and we'll show you that as we go through. Okay, so that's the map in a nutshell, really. It's not too complex. Was there any questions real quick before I proceed? Silence is compliance, so we will move on. All right, the pieces. Fortunately, pieces are pretty easy. They're generic counters. Let's start with the North Vietnamese. The North Vietnamese are this light shade of red, and then if you scroll down to Artapu, or I'm not going to pronounce that correctly. If you look underneath the artillery unit there, they are darker red. They are veterans. So either you're untried, what's called untried, which is the lighter side, or you're darker, which means you're the veterans. Okay, the difference is on the left side, the number for untried is 1, and for veterans, the left side number is 2. The movement factor is the same for everybody. On the red side, it's 4. On the Free World Allies, it's 6. VC only move 1 space. They don't have markers on one side because they're hidden, and I'll explain that in a minute here. There will be times that you can flip your markers over from untried to veteran, and again, we'll go over that as we go through the rules. And there's also some Laos units in Saravan. There's the communist Laos units, which I always forget their names. I think Pathet Lao, I believe. And then there are some veteran units next to Thailand. I'm not going to try to pronounce that. And they're veteran, and they're on the Free World Ally side. Now, you can fight over Laos with these units, and if you take Laos as the Free World Allies, you can do stuff. And if you take it as the communists, then you don't have to worry about the Free World Allies doing stuff and mucking with the Ho Chi Minh Trail. But we'll get into that. All right, so the VC. Now, this is a normal VC unit. It's a 1-1, which means it's got 1 firepower and 1 movement. And I will explain how VC work as we go. So I'm going to flip that guy back over and see if I can find, yeah. So if you go south of the one I just flipped over, the guy on the Ho Chi Minh Trail right next to Quang Nam, it's called a bad intel chit. This is a decoy. It still can be used for things like flipping provinces to North Vietnamese control. But if the US or Free World Ally player tries to engage it, it just flips over and a bad intel event happens. And I'll show you how that works. We'll go over that too. Now, there's also one other, but I don't know if it's in here because these are all randomly assigned at the beginning of the game. There's also a 2-1 VC unit, which is also called a plus unit. And then when we get into ambushes and stuff, you'll see why that's important. So that's the VC. The VC are important. They take control of provinces really easily. And also you will see if you get to play the Tet Offensive, they get to do a lot too. All right, for the Free World Allies, you've got the blue guys, which are either the US, they can also be Republic of Korea, or what's called IF, which is International Forces, which are the Australians, New Zealanders, and everybody else. They have a veteran side and a untried side, just like the North Vietnamese do. The green units are Arvin, which is South Vietnam's army. And they too have the same veteran and non-veteran or untried. One thing I didn't mention with the North Vietnamese, but I'll mention it now. You'll notice in Thua Then, the veteran US player underneath it, and I'll pull this out, has a tank. So the tank cannot be by itself. That's why it has a +2 on it, right? It has to be with another unit. but it gives that unit a +2 in combat. And then it moves 6. And if you look to the right of that, out in the ocean next to where it says I-Corps, there is a ship. This is called the Blue Water Navy. This is another what's called support unit, which is the same as the artillery units you saw on some of the NVA units that I have set up here. It too gives a +2, but its movement is in parentheses. What this means is it can move anywhere in the map when you activate it to move. When you are attacking, it can react up to 8 spaces either direction, and that's why it's in parentheses. So if I was going to move my guys up to Quang Tri and launch an attack on the VC there, my Blue Water Navy could actually react move up to Quang Tri because that's within 8 spaces of where it is. And it can help with the combat. It'll add another +2. There's also an Airborne Unit, which is down right next to where it says 2 Corps in Bien Dien. And it has a reaction of 3. So it's got 3 in parentheses. It can move, when you activate it, can move anywhere in the board. But when you're attacking, it can react 3 spaces. Now, defending, it cannot react until after the first round of combat. So if there's a second round, which you usually have to bring in reinforcements and stuff, you can then fly it to help defend. You'll notice there's red star markers. Those are provinces that the North Vietnamese control, which means that South Vietnam does not. Any space that has no flags in it is controlled by South Vietnam. The blue flag you see in Saigon means it's been pacified. Pacified is not control, it's something else. You still control that province, but the North Vietnamese player has to remove the pacification before he can even attempt to try to take over the province. And also you can't do it while there's, bad guys there either, or in this case, good guys, I guess. So those are the regular pieces. We have a bunch of markers. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a general game track. There's what's called SRPs, which are stored resource points. And I'll explain what resource points are in a moment. But they're used to do actions and things. And you can store them up and put them on the track. There's also, you'll see doves and hawks. In fact, this should be flipped. These are points. This is a sliding scale. Hawks are good for the blue player, and doves are for the North Vietnamese player. As the North Vietnamese player scores doves, the hawk slides down. Should be at 10. Yeah, it's at 10 right now. So it'll go downwards. When it gets to 0 and then passes 0, it flips over to the marker flips over to doves, and then you count. There's some other markers that come with the cards. We'll go over those as we go over the cards and play the cards. One other thing is there's an air base to the right of Quang Nai. That represents air bases in Thailand and other places where they launch bombing runs from, and I'll show you how those work as well. That's that. Now let's go to the meat of the game, which is the cards. First off, if you've played any card-driven games, this works like a lot of them. There's a number in the top left-hand corner of the card. In fact, I will put the first card in Laos near North Vietnam, just in case you can't see the live stream. Okay, so it's got a 4, which means you have 4 action points. In this game, you can use that to move units. Now, moving into an enemy space does not automatically cause combat. So all it does is move. You can also use part of the RPs, resource point. You can also use part of the resource points to initiate combat in a space when you're in a space with enemy units. You can also buy the event that is on the card. You'll notice some of them say cost 1 underneath the picture, or cost 2 on the one I put on the board. If you pay 2 of the 4 of that card or one of these other cards, you get the event. Usually you can only buy the event once unless it says otherwise on the card, but you do not have to choose between the resource points and the event. So you can do that. You can also activate the support units I was talking about. The U.S. support units can move independently, not the artillery, but the tanks and the Blue Water Navy and the Air Cav can all move independently. By the way, there's also another one. It's called the Riverboat. You get it in Section 4. It's a card. I'll show you how that works when we get to it. Now, there are different cards. There's ones that say response on the bottom. That means that you can play those under certain circumstances during the other player's turn, usually. You can spend them just for the RPs and not use the response. But you don't get to buy the response when it's your turn, usually. You can only play the response when that situation on the card comes up. Also, all response cards, when you play them, you get to draw a new card. The last one I'm going to show you is, it's called Caisson. It's one of the campaign cards. Now, campaign cards are not drawn normally. They are not random. You intentionally put one in your hand. So every turn you get 5 cards. Before you draw your 5 cards, you can choose to say, I'm not drawing one of them. I'm drawing one of my campaign cards. You do have to tell the player that you're doing that, but you don't have to tell them which one you're drawing. Now, on blue and red, there are 4 campaign cards that correspond to each zone on the map, the 1st Corps, 2nd Corps, 3rd Corps, and 4th Corps. And what they do is score you extra points. They're a year-long campaign. So you don't have to play them on your first turn, but every turn in that year, which you get 4 plays a year, you draw 5 cards, but you play 4 of them. Every card play you do not play it, you're losing a couple points. So, for example, I drew Caisson, which is the red player's campaign Zone 1 card. And what it says is basically I get 3 action points from the card. And if I have stored resource points, I can use those up to 3 of them. And I'll explain why that's special in a minute. But I have to spend those 3 extra points in Zone 1 for battles in Zone 1. Tim's telling me to stick the cards on the map. So I'll stick Caisson over there. And this is what a response card looks like as well. All right, so sorry about that. The response card down here, you'll see Sappers, which is next to North Vietnam. And then there's the Caisson card. If you hover your mouse over the Caisson card, it'll blow up. I'm going to do that so you can see it if you're watching the video. Basically, it means you're doing a concerted effort in that zone. You follow what the card says. If you're fighting in Zone 1, it says you get 2 extra. You roll 2 dice instead of 1 in combat and pick the best one. And for every turn that you control 4 more provinces in I Corps, you score a dove. So every card play, you're going to assess this. And then the blue player has a similar looking, I'm going to pull out his Zone 1 card so you can see it. I'll put it down here below the others. This one is, again, Zone 1. It's similar, but the one thing you notice between red and blue is blue has to control all the provinces in the zone, where usually the red player normally only has to do a majority of them. Again, cards will change. But now, when you play this card, either for just the RPs or for the campaign, it's out of the game. So if you play it for the event, you get your 3 RPs on the card, and then you can spend more of your stored RPs if you wish. And then you leave it in front of you for 4 turns, and then you keep scoring it at the end, and then at the end you get rid of the card. If you just play it for resource points, it's out of the game. So you want to be careful with these. And again, you do not draw these randomly. You choose them and put them into your hand. That's that. I'm going to go over the major Red has two major campaigns that are board wide. One's called Tet Offensive and one's called the Easter Offensive. I'm going to go over those a little bit later. One question I get asked a lot is, well, how do I invade Cambodia and Laos? There are cards that come into play. There are 1969 cards that don't get shuffled into the deck until 1969. They do have cards that allow you to bomb and enter Laos and Cambodia as the U.S. and even as the Arvin, or the, not Arvin, I'm sorry, North Vietnamese player. There are also black cards. You'll notice the red cards are for the red player, the blue cards are for the blue player, but there's also black cards. All that means is they're what's called a neutral deck. So every game you have, you take half the black deck and you put half of it into the red deck and half of it into the black deck. What this does is it randomizes it so you don't get the same deck of cards every game. But the black cards, I'll pull these out so you can see them. All right. So you'll see this black card. I put it next to Sappers above Operation Starlight. It's called Whispering Death. The only difference between this and the red and blue cards is usually there's a blue cost and then a red cost, and the blue player uses the blue section of the card and the red player uses the red section. And I got another one here called the Pentagon Papers. You can look at those. There's also a nifty little thing up here. It's a marker with a pound sign over it. It's just to the left of the dice. It shows how many provinces are controlled by each side. So this is important when you're playing the game. So, and again, we'll go over this. So the way a turn works, normally you do reinforcement phase. We do not do a reinforcement phase in the first turn of the game. And so we do a hand refill where you get your new hand of cards. You will draw 5 cards, but before you do that, you need to choose whether or not you're going to choose a campaign card. I gave one to the red player. I did not give one to the blue player. Also, just so you're aware, on the first turn of the game, you may not play as your first card a campaign card. So drawing a campaign card during the first turn is not always the best idea because the war is just getting started and all that good stuff. Now, another thing you need to know about this game, you can start on any year you want. You don't have to start in 1965. If you have the rule book, in the back of the book, it'll tell you how to set up each year from 65 to 72. And you can play from any year you want to any year you want. So if you only want to play 1 year, you can do that. That's what the numbers underneath the year for, is what victory point totals there should be at the end of that year if you're ending the game there. And I'll explain how those work a little bit later. So we do the hand refill phase, and then it's the card phase. This is the heart of the game. Red player goes first. So how does this all work? We will play, I'm going to put it up next to North Vietnam here, Sappers. So that's a 4 RP card. And one of the things you can also do with these RPs is store them. And I'll show you how that works here in a minute. So you can activate any space you wish and move. Now, every time you can only move a VC 1 space, but you can also, I believe, only move them 1 each card play. We've played the 4 card. I am going to activate. We're going to activate first these guys that are near Con Trum, because I can't pronounce that space in Laos to save my life. And we are going to march. Now they can move up to 4 spaces. Even the artillery can move 4 spaces. So stacking limits, 4 infantry units and 1 of each type of support unit can be in the same space, but no more than 4 infantry and 2 VC units. So the first thing I'm going to do is activate these veterans here, and they're going to move into Con Trum. And then they are going to move into Bien Din, because I'm interested in pinning the air cavalry unit there and maybe attacking. So that was one of my 4 RP points, right? I moved less than 4 spaces. Next, I'm going to take one of my points, and I am actually going to move one of my VC from Peiku. No, I'm not going to do it from Peiku. I'm going to go southwest, actually, of Saigon in Kien Phong, which is way down near the bottom in 4 Corps. There are 2 VC units I set up there. I'm going to move one to An Glang. Okay, so that's 2 of my RPs. The third RP, I'm going to try to take control of the province for North Vietnam. The VC do this automatically. If it was a regular NVA group of units, you actually have to roll a die and roll under the amount of units that are in the space. So the more units, obviously, the better. But VC are even better because they can put a marker without rolling a die. So I'm going to clone this guy and move it over here. I've taken over On Glang. Now, this is good because it scores me points. It makes things harder for the free world allies. Now, remember when I was showing you the VC, there's 1-1 VC and 2-1 VC. There's also bad intel. It doesn't matter if they're bad intel or not. This guy actually is bad intel, I'm just telling you. He can still convert spaces because he's hidden. Until someone exposes him, he can run around and convert as many spaces as he wants. So within the limit of only moving 1 space, 1 VC each card play. So that's 3 of my points. I'm not going to use the event this time. I'm going to take that last resource point and go to the very bottom to the game track and give myself another SRP. There's a couple reasons why you want to do this. One is you can spend 1 SRP every time you play a regular card to add to the number, but you can only use 1 SRP. Unless you're doing a campaign, which I mentioned, where you can use 3 SRPs, but they have to be used in attacks in that zone. And it says so on the card, so you should be able to remember that. Okay. So that is the red player's first turn. Now, if I continue, the blue player, I'm going to show you a few things here. So I'm going to put the card again next to North Vietnam. I am playing Whispering Death. I didn't really explain the bombers, so we're going to show you how all this works. First off, if you want to pacify a space, this is important. You control all the spaces in Vietnam that are not marked with any flag. If you want to pacify a space, it helps to stabilize the South Vietnamese government and makes it harder for the North Vietnamese. For the North Vietnamese, they have to remove the pacification marker as one action and then take another action to take over the space. So you've just slowed them down. And as far as the South Vietnamese government goes, the more pacified spaces you have, the better, because at the end of the turn, we count up the Arvin dead in the body count box. If the Arvin dead is greater than the number of pacified spaces on the board, you could have a coup in South Vietnam, but there's a way to avoid it, and we'll go over that when we get there. But also, the other cool thing is Arvin are also really good at pacifying because they automatically get to pacify. So my first spot will be to pacify Quang Nam up there in the north in I Corps. And I'm also going to spend 1 BP on the event on this card. Conducting bombing missions against 2 adjacent South Vietnam provinces that you may bomb without bombers needed, which is cool because I only have 1 bomber right now. I'm going to bomb Quang Tri and try to get rid of that VC. Now, on the side of the board, or if you're using the tables here, you go to the bomber table. It is on the side of the board, but I recommend you use the tables at the top there. So you look at how many units are in the space. In this case, there's 1. And then I roll a D6. Now, there are some modifiers. There is no red anti-aircraft present. There are cards that give them anti-aircraft and things like that. It's not during a monsoon. That's another card. Let's see. -2 for the Lima Site 85, which is another card which we have not played yet. And so it's a straight die roll. So I'm going to roll a blue D6. I'm going to get a 5, which is a miss. Bummer, but okay. I could try to get that guy again. The problem with that is 1 units are hard to hit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over and bomb the veteran units that just moved into, what is that, Bien Din, down there right next to the 2-core label on the map there, right in the middle of the map. They've got 5 units in that space, which means I have a better chance of hitting something. And I'm going to roll a blue die, and I rolled a 2. And that means I hit one of them. So the red guy gets to choose which one. He'll probably take one of the veterans because he doesn't want to lose his artillery right away. So I eliminated one of the North Vietnamese. Yay! Now I could also take the bomber that somebody moved that was in the airbase, and I can place that into any space and do the same thing. For free, does not cost me any RPs. It also stays in that space till my next turn. If the enemy tries to move through the space where it's been bombed, there is a +1 to their movement because it's being bombed currently and you don't want to walk through there. By the way, also, if you move through a veteran, an enemy veteran, you can move through enemy spaces, by the way. You can just walk right by them. But if they're veterans, they give you +1 to your move as well. So I did my Whispering Death. I am going to move these Arvin units in Quang Nam. Now, here's something you also need to know about Arvin. Arvin don't move like other units. You actually have to say where they're going and what path they're taking. So with these units, I'm going to leave 1 behind, but I have to say I'm going to the Konturum province, where that VC is down there, and I'm going to go through Quang Tin. Then you have to roll a die, and that's actually how many spaces it moves in the action. I, of course, rolled a 1. So I'm going to leave one of these guys here because I said I would, and the other 2 can only move to Quang Tin. That's the Arvin for you, right? So I could spend my last action and try to get them to move again, which not going to do. I'm going to activate Darlok, which is another 4 Arvin units, and I'm going to move them to Quang Duck, which is right below them, so they don't have to roll because it's only 1 space. So Darlok is in the middle of the board, right below Piku. You see where it says South and then Vietnam, they're right next to where it says Vietnam. And they're moving into Quang Duck. Now, the reason I'm doing this is not because it's an optimal move. I want to show you something. Whenever free world or blue player, green or blue player, assets move into a VC space, the VC, if it's not a bad intel unit, this bad intel units cannot ambush. But regular units can. So I flip the VC unit over. It's now exposed. I'm going to go to my charts and tables again. But again, this is on the side of the map. I'm going to go to ambush. Okay, they don't have it. So we're going to use the one on the side of the board. You have to look at what type of VC it is. So there's VC and VC plus. VC are the 1-1 units. VC plus are the 2-1 units. So I roll again a 6-sided die. I'm going to roll the red one. And I rolled a 5. And I'm going to look on the 5 for a VC is a D. Defending unit eliminated. So one of these Arvin guys is eliminated. So that is the blue players or their turn. So we're going to discard that card. And we're going to go back to the red player. And we're going to play I'm going to put this up next to North Vietnam again, which is 5 RPs. First thing I'm going to do, let's do a battle so you can see what a battle looks like. So I am going to first spend 2 of my RPs to activate the event on the card, which states in 1 battle round, roll 2 dice instead of 1 and add both of your battle factors. And add both to your battle factor. Okay. Defending units may attempt to evade. So you notice there was an ambush table, and above it is an evasion table. This tries to cover everything from VC to other units. Do I want to try to evade? No, I'm feeling pretty frisky here. Let's let this roll through. The ROK, the Republic of Korea, is there, and they don't want to back down. So if there are any VC units in the space, we would reveal them. If no defending units remain, then the battle's over, and the player does not have to spend 1 RP to initiate the battle. The free world ally stayed, so there will be a battle. So we're going to sum up the factors. All right, the red side has veterans, which are worth 2. So he's got 2, 4, 6 infantry points, and +2 for the artillery makes 8. Okay. And the free world side has 2 untried Arvin units for 2, 1 veteran US player for 4, 1 untried Republic of Korea for 4 for 5. And the air cav is already there, so they don't have to react. They're just there. So that is 7. So it's 7 to 8. Real simple, right? The red player rolls a die and adds 8 to the die roll. You look on the combat table, and I look at red. There's a red column and a blue column. I rolled an 8 plus a 6 is a 14, and the result is 2, which means the free world allies have to lose 2 units. Now the free world allies will roll. They have a 7, and they roll a 2. Of course they do. I look in the blue column on 9, and the red guys lose 1 unit. All right. So now for each blue unit, whether it's US, ROK, or IF that you lose, the North Vietnamese score points for at the end of the round. So I'm going to take these on the Arvin. Okay. So I lose the 2 Arvin. I'm going to lose 1 of the North Vietnamese veterans because I don't want to lose the artillery. And because untried units survived the battle, they now can become veterans. So the way that works is there were 3 NVA units when they attacked, when they were attacked. The 2 Arvin units, if they had survived, would have flipped a veteran, and the ROK would have flipped a veteran because there were 3 North Vietnamese units that they were attacked by. So if they had survived, each unit that survives gets to flip over to veteran. So I'm going to flip the ROK over. Now the Arvin or the North Vietnamese fought 4 units, but they're already all veterans, so that doesn't matter. And so that's the combat. Now because the U.S. lost, they have to retreat. I'm going to take them. I'm going to put the air cav on top of them because they all have to retreat. They're going to go to 2 Hoa, which is a fire base. So I have 4 RP left. Let's see here. I am going to. I have some North Vietnamese untried regulars way down in the south, down here in Pre Vang, kind of near Saigon. So I'm going to move them 1, 2 to Long An, right south, just south of Saigon. And then I can move 1 VC. So I would move 1 VC from Peiku to Darlak, another point to do that. And then so on and so on and so on. All right, so we've done battles, we've done movement. Are there any questions? Is everybody kind of on the page with me?
One question on the movement. Do all the units, when you activate that area, do all the units have to move to the same place?
No.
Okay.
That was easy. Any more other easy questions? All right, so I'm not going to go through a whole turn because, that will take us forever, but you guys kind of get a gist for the move and the combat. The combat's real simple. Another example, just real quick. Let's say I was in Con Hoa. I moved the Arvin down to Nien Thuan, kind of moving south there. When I attack, I could take the Air Cav, which has that reaction 3, and I could move them into the battle as well. Just remember that the guys with the parentheses can react to an attack that the blue player is doing and enter that battle. But if they're defending, they can't come in until a second round is fought if you bring in what's called reinforcements, which you can do from neighboring spaces. You just move them in after the first round of the battle. And then if they want to spend another RP for another battle, then they can react. So we're going to move from the regular action phase. Again, I'll show you some of the specialized cards when we're done with this, but I just wanted to show you how kind of things moved along for the regular game. Now, after you're done playing your 4 cards, you're going to go to what's called an interphase. So if there are campaign cards that were played, you're going, or what's called grand campaign cards, which I'm going to go over a little bit later. You'll score those. Now, remember, you can activate these Laotian units if the North Vietnamese or the Free World player had activated their Laos units and attacked the other one. If you eliminated all the enemy units, the country will collapse and give the side that won either 3 hawk points or 3 dove points. So I could have used one of my RPs to activate like these. If I'd moved them up here, if you look next to the card where I played it near North Vietnam, and we had a battle, and the light gray guys won, then they could take over Laos. Now, the other player can stop that by spending 3 of their stored resource points to stop the country from going to the other side. That's another reason you can save your RP points when you play cards, and you can take as many of the points on the card and put them into the SRP that you want. The political will is adjusted by, there's a couple things on here. And again, this is on the player aid sheet, but I think it's also on a chart here on the somewhere on the board. If it's 1969 or later, the North Vietnamese automatically get 1 dove. For every US or ROK unit in the body count box, the North Vietnamese get 1 dove, which is political will. And if the red units are less than the number of blue units in the body count box, they also score a dove. So the only one that applies here, if we looked at it right now, is in the body count box at the bottom of the map. There are 3 Arvin, there are 2 red North Vietnamese. So because they're less red than blue, because green counts as blue, then they would score 1 dove point, which means this hawk marker would come out, and this one would go to 9, and this one would go to 0. So now we have 9 hawk points, not 10. All right, and then what you do is you count up the number of red flag provinces in South Vietnam, and based on that number, you get a certain number of points for the North Vietnamese, for the doves. So I have 2 pacified provinces, and I have 12 red flags. So in that, you just look it up. There's a little thing here on the interface summary where it says 12, I get 3 doves. So 1, 2, 3. Again, I didn't do a full turn, so this may not have come out this way, but it's okay. It still works. All right. Now we check for Arvin stability of the government. So we look at how many Arvin are in the body count box, and I look at how many pacified spaces I have, I got 2, and I have 3 Arvin. So normally South Vietnam's government could collapse. But because the blue player has stored resource points, he can pay the difference between the number of Arvin dead in the body count and the number of blue flags on the board. The difference is 1. I play 1 SRP, the government does not collapse. And then we can check for victory, which I told you would be these numbers here. So in 1965, if the end game red wins if political will is less than game goal. Okay, so political will is not less than -7. Auto win if hawk points are red is greater than 1, or if blue somehow got from 10 hawks to 13 hawks. So that's not an auto victory. Again, these numbers below the year, there is a chart on the play aids that explains what they are. So just go over that. But again, we would go to the next year. And then if you chose, you could say, well, I want to end the game in 1967. You can do that. So that's what these numbers are for each year. So again, you can start any year you wish, and then you can end any year you wish. And then you would go through that interphase thing that I just did, and then you would start with new reinforcements, which for the vassal module have been stacked so neatly next to the year. So the way this works, we'll go real quick through the reinforcement sequence. The NVA would get all these units right here in North Vietnam, and the blue player would get these. Now, the blue player, the red player is easy. It all just goes to North Vietnam. The blue player can distribute these, remember, stacking limit is 4, to any fire base, the blue outlined areas with the crossed rifles in any space. Now, if those are full, you can then deploy any extra units to any coastal province you wish. So once you've done that, you check if it's 1969, and then what's called Vietnamization starts happening, where U.S. units actually have to start leaving. So in 1969, the blue player has to choose 2 units to take off the board. And then for every 2 blue units that you take off for Vietnamization, you get to flip 1 Arvin unit over to veteran. Then you get replacements from the dead pool. So each type of unit gets a certain amount. So now that we've used the units in the body count box and we figured out all that stuff in the interface, they have a nice little button here. I can send them to the dead pool. They just slide up to the dead pool. And now I can get up to a certain number of the dead pool I get back for free. The North Vietnamese get up to 8 dead North Vietnamese back. They go straight to North Vietnam. If there were blue units in the dead pool, you get 1. Now remember, support units, if they're in a battle and they're the last unit in the battle, they're destroyed as well. They can be that 1 blue unit, or they're part of the red units as well. And then the Arvin get 5 of their units back. So in this case, the North Vietnamese would get all their reinforcements for 66. Then they would get everything in the dead pool back. The Arvin would get everything in the dead pool back. The Arvin set up in fire bases just like the US player does, unless they're all full, and then he would start going, oh, and you cannot set up in bases that are controlled by the enemy. So Pai Ku, if I'm saying that right, you cannot set up there because it's enemy controlled. Also, Bien Dien, you cannot do either. But once you've run out of fire bases, you can set up on the coast. And then you get 1 VC to draw out of the pool until you have 10 VC on the board. Once you have 10 VC on the board, you don't draw any more until you start losing a few. That is the basic gist of how the game goes.